So you were born into one of India's most respected industrial families. But I've always been curious, what was it like growing up in that household which is so famous? And did it feel like a blessing or was it also a burden sometimes?
I would say largely it was a blessing. My grandfather was a very open-minded person who was respected by his workmen, his technicians, and by society in general. Right up to the time that I went off to college, I got this huge amount of learning from extraordinary people who were at my grandfather's table. So I was not overwhelmed by the personalities, and I think a lot of my learning came from the humility these people had.
You've been outstanding entrepreneur, visionary leader, champion of quality, and I believe a karma yogi, contributing to the well-being of society through education, culture, art, and music.
My wife, after a gap of 2 generations, started the Sri Ram schools. And they've become extremely successful, now being run by my daughter-in-laws. And we started working. Today, we have more than 500 schools who we are helping. And this is going up year after year, year after year.
If a 30-year-old founder came to you and asked, how do I build a company that lasts 100 years? What's the one thing you would tell them to master?
If you have the desire to start a company, run it for the next generation, 100 years, then your attitude has to be, there are no shortcuts to success. There are no shortcuts to making money.
Welcome. Today's guest is Mr. Arun Bharatram, Chairman Emeritus of SRF Limited. I've known him for about 40 years and he's done some outstanding work in this field. And you'll have an opportunity to listen from him how he did it, why he did it, and learn something about it. Good morning, Arun.
Good morning.
It's so kind of you to accept my invitation for this important journey we have taken. At the request of so many people, I decided to try and put together the whole history of India's quality renaissance since 1980. And the people who have actually practiced it are the one who can contribute most. And the purpose is, in future, people should be able to learn how it happened, how it is happening now, and if there's some learning for them to take it up in the future, it'll be helpful. And I deeply appreciate that.
It's a great, great initiative. That's what I can say.
Thank you. And I think I've known Arun for maybe about 40 years, but more closely since we started working on the Deming journey in late 90s. That's a time when we got to know each other. And you've been outstanding entrepreneur, visionary leader, champion of quality, and I believe a karma yogi, contributing to the well-being of society through education, culture, art, and music.
Thank you.
This has been phenomenal. And I remember when we had this ISQ Jamshedji Tata Award presented to you in, I think, 2008 or something like that. That is when I did some research to find out what you've done. And by that, later on, I got to know what research I did was so true, interacting with you. I think what is remarkable is that your unassuming approach, where you're able to meet people very easily, great ability to listen to everyone with full attention and a calm mind, irrespective of what level people are. That's a remarkable characteristics of a human being, which you have displayed through your interaction over the years. High standard of ethics and social conscience. Another attribute which you find is so rare these days, but you demonstrate. So I'm indeed grateful to you for having allowed us to associate with your company in late 90s and work together, where we learned a great deal.
Well, we worked together and learned together.
That is true.
Yeah. There was a lot of learning, I think, that was going on in many Indian companies. And even with the practitioners of TQM, they were also constantly learning because the companies were all of a different nature and the same didn't apply to all companies. So I think there was a cross-learning that was taking.
Sure. Thanks for making it happen. So you were born into one of India's most respected industrial families. Your grandfather, late Lala Shriram, built DCM. Your father, Lala Bharatram, expanded it. But I've always been curious, what was it like growing up in that household which is so famous? And did it feel like a blessing, or was it also a burden sometimes?
I would say largely it was a blessing because my grandfather, and I learned a lot more from my grandfather than I did from my father. My grandfather, as you talked about me, was a very open minded person who was respected by his workmen, his technicians, and by society in general. So he was very particular that even as youngsters, when we were 10, 11, 12 years old, we should sit at the dining table where he had the most brilliant minds of India coming for dinner, and they talked about how the nation had to be rebuilt. And so we had people starting from Pandit Nehru to Sarojini Naidu to Aruna Asaf Ali, who was a leftist, okay, I'm forgetting that particular name.
Sardar Patel?
Not Sardar Patel. I think Sardar Patel had passed away by the time I was involved in these discussions that took place at the dining table. But there were like Advani, sorry, I'm mixing up Advani with Acharya Kriplani. Acharya, who was also a freedom fighter and who was also very much involved with the writing of the constitution. So there were, and then of course there were business people who used to come. So I was exposed to this kind of a milieu at a very young age, and right up to the time that I went off to college, I got this huge amount of learning from extraordinary people who were at my grandfather's table. And so I was not overwhelmed by the personalities. I just used to sit quietly and listen to them. And I think a lot of my learning came from the humility these people had in trying to rebuild the country. And so, your question of whether I was intimidated or I got something out of it, I would say very much. I learned a lot out of from my grandfather, and he was a very. He came from a very. Our family was not a very well-known family in Delhi. My great grandfather had started the Delhi Cloth Mills, DCM, which became DCM, and my grandfather built it up. And then he built up a lot of industries from all the way from Bengal to Punjab to Pakistan. So my grandfather had a huge vision of building new enterprises and, of course, education. He built the first commerce college, which is very well known, the Shriram College of Commerce, Lady Shriram College, and Research Institute, the Shriram Research Institute in Delhi. So he was, and this was not philanthropy for a namesake. He just believed in education for young people as being extremely important in a growing and a new nation. So I think when you talked about my various interests in life, education really started from the experience that I got from my grandfather.
Great. You all studied industrial engineering in Michigan, trained in Germany, and returned to India by the time you came to the licensing system in India.
Absolutely.
So when you came back to a protectionist, red tape heavy India, what was your mindset? Were you trying to bring international systems, what you learned, into Indian business, or Indian values into global thinking?
To be very frank, I came back. I was still a young man. I don't think we had ever experienced global thinking in India. We were always a controlled economy from the time we grew up. I mean, we were not a controlled economy before partition or before independence. It was a free economy. Industry used to grow privately. It was actually Pandit Nehru's idea of following the Soviet model of planning and control. So even before I came back from my studies, the whole scenario in India had changed, and we had become a command economy. So that's all I experienced in my life as a teenager and as a young man. So I wouldn't say that I could even compare. And of course, when I was in college, both in at Michigan and I studied in Germany also. I was more into my studies and college life than observing what was happening in the industrial sectors of those countries. So I think I would say that I was uh, brought up with a mindset that this is the way industry runs and this is how it is going to be in India. And unfortunately, it continued even after Panditji's passing away in the same mold, right up to the time of liberalization, which happened in 91. But right till then, it was a little bit of opening up was happening in Rajiv Gandhi's time. But the real boost to industry came in 90.
So I also remember, when I recall we're both the same age group, that those industry leaders who started industries prior to independence, they had a national agenda, like Lala Shri Ram, Walchand Hirachand, then TVS group, the Murgappa group, Tata group, Mahindras. They started industries as a means to a national well-being. To the licensing system, the whole mechanism seemed to have changed. There are two different categories of industry leaders you find who have grown subsequent to that. Of course, everybody is not the same. In manufacturing, particularly, in non-manufacturing like IT, etc., there were no licenses, and people grew with the right kind of a mindset. Again, you find certain number of people, whether it's Infosys and others, who started coming back with the same national mindset.
Yes, this was one of the pitfalls of the license Raj, that straightforward businessmen who had grown up before independence uh, had value systems which were uh, high integrity, ethical values. Uh, there was no question of corruption as a way of life. Uh, a lot of it started with the license Raj regimes that were there from even Pandit Nehru's time onwards, but more so in Indira Gandhi's time. And we started seeing that there were new entrants into the industrial scene who had no business experience, who had no background of industry. Suddenly, because of the license Raj, becoming very, very important large companies. But that is because of the favors that were given to them or favors that were bought by them. So that period was a different era in our society. And this continued right up to the time of liberalizing. Unfortunate, but that is the way it was.
That is true. So when SRF was just beginning, what was your first real test? Was there a moment in those early years where you thought this might have been a mistake? How did you push through a totally new kind of a business, leaving DCM?
Yeah. So DCM was the mother company, and it had a lot of businesses under it, from textiles, which was the original business, to chemicals, PVC, plastics, a whole host of industry, sugar. All these were under the umbrella of one company called DCM. When the thought was given to starting a nylon tire cord business, we already were in DCM in the rayon tire cord business, but the rayon tire cord business, everyone realized, was going to be a dying industry. And the future was going to be in the nylon tire. So we thought, okay, why don't we get involved with the nylon tire cord industry? Fortunately, we got a license for it. Um and when I say fortunately, because if we had not got a license, that would have been the end of the story. But we got a license, and our value system always said, we are not going to ask for any favors and we are not going to give anything for it. So some people we like us did get license. You made a good case and you did get a license. So we did get this license, and it was to be set up in Tamil Nadu. So uh, the board of DCM decided that why not have a company which is promoted by DCM and not under the DCM umbrella directly. So it was an investment made by DCM, 40% stake, and the rest was in the public. And we set up this company in Tamil Nadu, not very far from Chennai, Madras in those days. And I was offered to go there and work in that company. To be honest, I was a bit reluctant. I used to joke with the family that मुझे वनवास मिल रहा है, and I am going to be sent to Lanka for 14 years, and I don't know anybody there, and I don't know how it is going to be. I was newly married. I had two children. So, any case, I went there, and we laid the foundation of the factory, and we started the factory. Now, this was all happened in 72. Unfortunately, in 73, the first oil shock came when the OPEC was formed, and the price of oil tripled or became 4 times the original price. And our industry is so nylon tire cord is solely based on petroleum. And we were in utter shock. The cost of the factory, putting up the factory, went up by 50%. And I was in charge of the factory by then. I was in charge of the company. And I was running around how to raise money to be able to survive. Of course, DCM put in some money, but I had to raise more money, and our shareholding in DCM came down. But that's neither here nor there. But the whole system was so rule bound, inefficient, that I couldn't just go to a bank and say, yes, the prices have gone up, the costs have gone up, but we will recover it, because inevitably everybody has industry based on oil will have to raise prices. And if we raise prices, we'll recover the money. But neither the banks, which were all by then nationalized, nor the general public was willing to invest. And so this was a difficult time. And your question on whether I had any doubts at that time, this was one of the biggest. But even the bureaucracy and the banking system was highly of a control mindset. So, because of this financial problem that we had, we actually were running out of cash flow to even run the factory. And the day came when we would very soon have to shut down the factory. I went to the chairman of the Indian Bank, they were our largest funders for working capital. I said, I need permission to get a loan immediately of 2.5 lakh rupees to be able to take my stocks out of the warehouse because they were all under the bank's control. I need 2.5 lakh. Otherwise, the material will freeze in the equipment and it will take me 6 months to clean up the equipment. And he said, sorry, rules are rules. I can't give you an extension of loan for 2.5 lakhs. I went back and I told my people, just take the material out. We'll break the rule. And it was all mortgaged to the bank. I said, I'll face the consequence. Just take the material out. I can't have the equipment damaged. So we ran the factory continuously. I went back to him and I said, I'm very sorry to inform you, but I just broke your rule. And I took out the mortgaged material and put it into the factory. He gave me a loud shouting and he said, don't ever do that again. I said, I will never do it again, provided you also understand that the industry can't run like this. So this was a tiff I had with him. But hopefully it brought some sense into it.
That's great. How do you manage sudden changes in environmental regulations, like elimination of ozone depleting strategies that impacted your business?
We were aware of the fact that CFCs that we were producing were going to be phased out. And we had started the whole company business, I would say, of refrigerant gases was started in the late 80s. And we knew that CFCs would eventually have to be phased out by 1999. So we had a window of about 12 years. But it was a plant that was a swing plant. We could make CFCs and we could also make HCFC. So we switched the whole plant to making HCFC. And HCFCs were still in demand and the demand was growing. It's a common refrigerant called HCFC 22, R22, and that was much in demand. So we didn't have a problem as far as the first ozone depleting material, the CFCs, were being phased out. That was a challenge, but it was managed well by us, I would say, because we had originally set up a swing. There were some companies that did not have swing. So they had to invest again into making a plant to make HCFC 22 because they knew that the plant for CFCs would be closed down. But the good side of this was that as per the Montreal Protocol, we were to be compensated because we said at the time when we put up the plant, there was no Montreal Protocol. You had not decided that this has to be phased out by 1999. So you have to compensate us who have only been in production for 10 years. And so there was a pretty decent amount of money that was given to us as a compensation for phase.
Spoken about not bending to unethical practices in government contracts and expansion. Well known. So have you ever lost a major business opportunity because you refused to play the Indian short game? Was it worth it?
And not in my time. In my time, I think I was quite fortunate to get licenses for whatever we applied for. Uh, the only one which was kind of happening when we were starting SRF was that we also applied to the government to make tires. And there it became evident that there were many players who were wanting this license, and it was going to be given, the licenses were going to be given to people whom we could not compete with in the sense of handling the government. So we didn't get into it. And in hindsight, I would say it was a good decision or a lucky decision because we did not have to invest heavy amount of money into a business which otherwise would have prevented us from investing in more exciting.
Okay. You converted into an
It was an
opportunity.
opportunity.
Great. Today we talk about ESG like it's a boardroom tick box. Every company does that and report it. But you were talking about environmental responsibility long before it became corporate vocabulary. I recall even during our association with SRF and kind of things you were doing near the plant here and reclaiming land, building water bodies and things like that.
Yes. Perhaps this was something I learned from my grandfather. Don't waste anything. There is the smallest thing can be utilized, can be of value. And I'll just give you a very mundane example. You can say that it's a relatively unimportant issue. But my father, in his times in the 40s and 50s, there was no other way of communicating other than through letters. So every letter that he got, he used to take the envelope and he used to open up the envelope and he used to fold that envelope into a straight piece of paper and he used to make a pad out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So all the letters that he used to get, he used to finally make a pad out of it. And he used to use that for his notes and for his for any work that he was doing internally, calculations or anything. So once I saw him doing this, I said, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "Why waste it? It's going to go into the dustbin. Somebody will have to collect it. Somebody will have to burn it. This way, I'm utilizing something which otherwise would have been treated as waste." So it's a small example of how the thought always used to be there in my mind after that, that what is it that we can do to avoid waste. So the the whole concept of ESG was not talked about, not known, but inherently we used to always, by my upbringing and my having seen it in my family, we used to just think of how we can avoid uh, creating waste or not utilizing waste if it had to be created. And I would say that this was a lesson well learned, well absorbed, and something that I've practiced all my life. So I think this is now something internalized. I can give many examples of what we have done in our company and in our facilities uh, everywhere. Uh, I mean, I think this is now practiced by practically every company in India. Any water that is discharged has to be treated internally and used for gardening. This has now become an old practice. It's not something very new, but every bit of water that is brought into the factory has to be um brought to a level where it can be used for gardening purposes or any other purpose that is not required for drink. So there are many, many examples.
So let's go back to the 1990s. TQM was seen as a Japanese concept, not tested in India. While the American style management was in vogue, we were privileged to have been invited by Ram on behalf of SRF to support SRF's TQM journey, along with Professor Kume. That was a great privilege for us. Why did you choose to implement TQM at SRF? What was your personal belief that made you stick with it? And how did it gel with what you learned in USA and practice before TQM?
Yes, a very interesting question, because I was trained ultimately as an industrial engineer. That was my degree in industrial engineering. And many of the concepts there in industrial engineering were, although Six Sigma had not by then come into vogue, but many of the practices of quality, etc., were taught to us in our courses in America. My first exposure to what is known as TQM, and I had not heard the word TQM, was when we had a joint venture collaboration with Nippon Denso, which was started in, if I'm not mistaken, 84 or 85. And this was because Nippon Denso was one of the main suppliers to Toyota for starter motors, for alternators, for many other electrical systems. And we had in DCM a collaboration with Toyota, and that had come up in the early 80s, maybe in 82 or 83. And so we were pushed into going into a joint venture with Nippon Denso to start manufacturing the products that were required by Toyota. And if we were going to make them for Toyota, we would also supply them to other Japanese companies, because there were 4 licenses issued for making trucks. One was Toyota, the other one was
Nissan was one of them.
Nissan, the third one was Mitsubishi, which collaborated with Eicher, and the fourth one was
Swaraj
Mazda.
Right, Mazda.
So there were 4. So we said, okay, there should be a decent market. And then very quickly we also came to realize that 2-wheelers required electricals. So Honda had come up, and even TVS had a collaboration with Suzuki. And by then Suzuki was becoming itself a major auto company.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, yeah, the market will be in good shape here. So we decided to go into a joint venture with them. And when I used to, and Ramanathan, as he is always called Ram, I started calling him Ramanathan, but now, of course, even I call him Ram. Ramanathan was the MD, CEO of Nippon Denso. Not in the beginning, we had Som Mittal as the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
But Som left and Ram became the CEO. And Ram got very interested and intrigued by the way that the Japanese used to run their factories. Because when he visited Nippon Denso and he saw how they were running their company and the shop floor, etc., he came back and insisted with them that we should follow the same practices. In any case, they were also keen that we should follow the same practice. So when I visited the factory, which is in not very far from Delhi, in UP, when I visited the factory, I used to observe that everything that every tool that a workman used was always put in the same place after he used it. And I said, how do they know where to put it exactly? And then I saw that there used to be little chalk marks or white marks. So a plier had to be put in the same place, a screwdriver had to be put in the same place, or any other tool that they were using had to be put in the same place. And I asked Ram, why is it necessary that it should be? Because he said, I've learned from them that a workman should be automatically able to reach out to the tool that he needs and he knows exactly where it is. And this may be saving us a fraction of a second. But it is important because ultimately all those fractions of seconds lead to productivity improvement. I said that's something I'd never heard of. And then whenever I used to go, I used to keep observing the different ways that they were practicing. By then I'd started hearing the word TQM. And I said, okay, so this is what TQM is. He said, no, this is a very small part of TQM. This is not TQM as such. But this is one element of what TQM is. So, unfortunately, after 91, when there was a huge crisis of foreign exchange in India, and we still had to import in Nippon Denso, SRF Nippon Denso, we had to import quite a bit of the raw materials, the special alloys from Japan, and even special copper wire from Japan. And suddenly, we found that we don't have foreign exchange to buy all these components. And Nippon Denso was furious with us. How can we run a factory if you cannot import these critical ingredients? So we said, we are bankrupt, the country is bankrupt. And they were so upset with us that they said, we want to get out of this. I said, look, you think you can manage it better than us? I'm willing to sell you my entire shares. You run the business. You take over the business. Because I'm not going to bribe anyone to get raw materials or anything. You want to do it, it's your business. So we parted ways, I think in 92 or 93. I think probably 93. By that time, they were very upset with us. And I also gave some thought to this and I said, we've always been an industry which is a process industry, continuous process industry, whether it was tire cord, whether it was our chemical business. These were all continuous manufacturing business. So I said, somehow these two things don't gel. I can put my management effort and money into one or the other. I subsequently also sold SRF Finance, which was quite a successful company in the mid-90s. But that had nothing to do with the shortage of foreign exchange. But I can come to that also. But that has nothing to do with TQM either. This event of selling off the business to Nippon Denso got me rewards because I got the best crop of engineers and management people from SRF Nippon Denso into SRF, including Ramanathan. So Ram came with an entire team which had worked in SRF Nippon Denso. Because I told them, look, these were all people I sent from SRF and I will take them back into SRF. If they were recruited by SRF Nippon Denso, you can have them, keep them. But anybody who came from SRF, I'm taking them back into it.
Okay.
So Ram and many of the brilliant engineers and people in the marketing, etc., came back to SRF. And so that was a gain for us and an eye-opener for us as to what TQM was all about.
So I remember the resistance you faced amongst senior leaders who were used to traditional approaches, saying this is assembly line and not for us, we are a process industry and so on and so forth. I also used to hear some of these things being mentioned in the corporate office to the senior people.
This is true. It is absolutely true that when Ram came back to SRF, he kept telling me, sir, we have to get into understanding more about TQM and how it can be applied to our industry. And I said, Ram, I am game for it. I am open-minded. How are we going to convince all our people? Because, we used to talk about it openly. And he said, maybe the only way to do this is to take our entire top management team to Japan to attend one of Juice's 2-week program.
Right.
Where we will be exposed to practices of TQM, including in continuous process industries. So I said, that sounds like a good idea, but it's damn expensive. And Ram said it will be worth every penny that we spend. So we went. We were, I think, about 12 of us. Because they were not only just the senior managers, I took some other people, including people from finance. Because I said, the guys who will be opposed to it later on will be your finance people. Because they'll say, why are we wasting money on this? So we all went, spent 2 weeks there, visited many factories through the good offices of Juice, and had many lectures, including from Professor Kume, and other great teachers. And we came back to India, and I had a session with all our top management. And I said, what did you think of our experience at Juice? So I would say about 60% of them said, yeah, maybe it's worth giving it a try. 40% was still not convinced. So I said, okay, I'm taking a decision right here that we will follow the process of working towards getting the Deming Award. Now, just to tell you, by then, we had 2 major businesses. One was our tire cord business and associated businesses with tire cord. And we had the chemical business. So I said, let's first work on our tire cord business because there is some element of discrete manufacturing also there. In the chemical business, it's all completely process, continuous industry. So we said, okay, we'll work on the tire cord. Now, tire cord we had by then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different plants spread all over India as well as in Dubai. So we said, and then we had already engaged Professor Kume. And Professor Kume, our terms with him were that he would come every 2 months and he would spend a week or 10 days every 2 months. And he would be teaching us the essence of TQM, and he would be teaching us the methodology to be followed in not just learning, but also following TQM process. So that was a great experience, even for me. Most of the work was being done in Chennai, in Madras, because that was the mother plant. And we had Professor Kume, who used to come every 2 months. I used to go down there, not every 2 months, but I used to be there often, attending his lectures and attending his sharing of knowledge on TQM. And very gradually, we started implementing little aspects of TQM. The usual first step was introduce Kaizen, which was the kind of first step. What was amazing was that the shop floor guys, the workmen, were the most enthusiastic. And they said, this is the first time we've been asked to do something which is going to improve our working conditions or going to give benefit to the company through us. And so that was the first experience we had. And then, of course, by then, we had already started working on the methodology, the process, and all in manufacturing. Eventually, we also came to non-manufacturing. But this was all initially in manufacturing. And great kudos to Professor Kume, who taught us that there is virtually no difference between discrete manufacturing and continuous manufacturing. Equipments are different. The process may be slightly different. And so he pushed us because there was some reluctance even at that time. But by 2000, long journey for us because we started somewhere in 95, 96. Long journey for us. Somewhere in 2001, he said, I think you're ready to challenge the Deming Award. But you will have to do a lot of work, paperwork. You will have to think of what questions will come to you, how you're going to answer them. And that was the first time my CEO of the tire cord business came to me and said, Sir, I don't think we will be ready. Because we had to do what was called, I think, a provisional assessment.
Diagnosis.
The diagnosis. And if you cleared the diagnosis, then you could challenge the award. So he said, I don't think we'll even be able to do the diagnosis. Ram said, no, we are ready. And then he said, we'll have to burn the midnight lamp. I said, so let's burn the midnight lamp. And I used to go to Chennai and stay there for a few days at a time. And we worked on it. And we did burn the midnight lamp. We got our diagnosis. We cleared that. And then he had cold feet again. He said, why can't we wait for one more year? I said, no. If we wait for another year, at the time when we are ready, you will say, no, let's wait for another year. There's not going to be an end to it. So we decided that we are going to challenge it. And I think somewhere in end of 2001.
2001, you had the diagnosis. 2003 or 4, you got the award.
We got the award in 2003.
Yeah.
But we had to be challenged. But the challenge really was we had 7 or 11 professors who came to challenge us.
Yeah.
And the kind of questions they asked were amazing. And I had to do one sitting with them to talk about the vision and what I expect to get out of not the award per se, but out of the TQM effort that we are making. What is it that it's going to lead to? What will it lead to? So I had to be prepared to answer these questions. And there were 4 of them sitting and grilling me. And I had to answer these questions. And I said, this is what we want to achieve. And at the end of 2003, we were awarded we were given the award, or we took the award in 2000. And that was a great moment for us of pride and justification for what we had done. I just want to give you a small example that while we were working on this, on the journey, we had already started implementing many things because there is nothing which says that while you're learning, don't apply what the learnings that you have. So just to share with you and the audience, we used to make tire cord. 18% of our tire cord used to be graded as second grade. And the second grade material used to be used not for tire cord purposes. Maybe it went to cycle tires, went into scooter tires, went into motorcycle tires or tractor tires, but at a heavily discounted price. So Ram said that, look, we have to work on this and see how we can bring this down. Eventually, within 1 year, we were able to bring it down to 1.5%, from 18% to 1.5%. Now, that was a great eye-opener. And when people realized that this was not because we had changed the machinery, not because we had changed the formulae of the material that went into the production of tire cord, but entirely because of the effort we put in to understand why we were generating 18% second grade material. And once we started seeing these kind of results, the enthusiasm in the whole business grew rapidly. And I would say that by the time we got the award, we were ecstatic that not because of the award, that we had actually achieved what we had set out.
Great. Actually, I remember before starting this journey, once I had 2-day program with the entire management team, which you led, and we developed the vision, mission statements and all that for the company, value structure and everything. And then when you requested for Professor Kume, then he was, since I was a member of the ISO/TC 176 committee, where he was the chairman of the Japanese delegation, I requested him. So he humbly accepted the request to help SRF. And he did it through TQMI. We were fortunate in this process to learn. And you're absolutely right. Initially, Ram said, we start. The head of the business said, we want a process-centered organization. He said, okay, let's start with that. We started with that and gradually brought it in alignment with TQM to get his buy-in.
Yeah. You're right. You see, a lot of people at the top management, they read a lot of stuff. They read about other companies' success, what they have done, how they have done it. And they think because they've succeeded, that's the only way to go about it. And so to change people's attitude and minds is always difficult. And I've seen this in my entire lifetime, that to change people's mindset is the most difficult thing to do. Because people have fixed ideas, and they get fixed ideas because they've read something very often. I'm not saying always, very often. And they've read something and they believe that that's the only way to success. So, yes, this was an issue which we had to face. But, after we succeeded here, I said, we've done a great job and this was our biggest business. Then the CEO of the chemical business said, "Sir, I also want to challenge the Deming Award." I said, "How will you do it? This is a complete process industry. There's no discrete manufacturing here, and there is no, sir, I want to challenge it." So I said, "Okay, go ahead. Ram is there, and he'll help you." I think by that time, Ram had decided to move on, but he helped them,
Yeah.
and they also challenged the Deming Award and got it. And so, two of our businesses, our biggest businesses, got the Deming Award.
Actually, Roop Salotra was the heading at that time when you got the award.
Roop was heading it.
And the year you got the award, Deming, for chemical business in
Yes.
2012, I got the individual award. So we were
In
on the stage
2012?
together. Yeah.
Okay.
We were on the stage together.
Okay. Yeah.
And I recall, even the time taken to the annual overall we used to in SRF, your Chennai plant, came down from 45 days to 15 days,
Yeah.
which was a remarkable thing. And I recall in Dubai when we were visiting along with Professor Kume, so people said, we can't make such an improvement because the machines are old. So Professor Kume, in a very humble and simple way, he says, "So why can't you make them as good as new?" So that was a trigger when people get motivated. Okay, we take this challenge and we'll do it. And that's where the belief started becoming stronger and stronger.
Yes. So
Remarkable.
this whole aspect of TQM and the journey that most of us who followed it have been through is that there is always room for incremental improvement. People don't realize that there is no end to this. There is no perfection level. There is always one level beyond that. And that is something that we are still following very, very carefully and assiduously. And that's why I said when we talked about ESG and effluents and waste and things like that, this is part of that whole learning that we have. And even though many parts of our organization didn't go through the Deming journey as such, but the whole concept of TQM is now all pervasive in SRF.
I recall your Trichy plant also used to go there and we
Yes.
used to have.
But these were relatively small plants. But our particularly our specialized chemical business, which has 450 people in R&D, and R&D is something where you wonder whether you can implement TQM. I mean, can you use TQM there? And my CEO is saying, "Sir, we are using it. We don't necessarily tom-tom about TQM, but all the principles of TQM are being used by us because that's one of the ways that we are improving our research, the way that we are cutting down time on attaining our goals. That's one way that we are trying to work on seeing how we can improve our effluents and waste, etc., how we can bring down the cost of production. So all this is part of TQM.
One of the challenges we find in many companies attempting to practice TQM, it's based on facts, the truth. And some companies, we find it very difficult for people to come out to the truth. They hide the issues and the problems. And how did you overcome this difficulty of being self-honest for each person in the organization and to get the facts out into the open?
So I would say that every company's DNA is different. And I had always believed, even before we started practicing TQM or even knew about TQM, that the philosophy of my grandfather is something which I passed on to all those who joined SRF, that the most important things are ethics, integrity, reliability, the being honest, with each other and being upfront when you make a mistake. I told them I had made many mistakes in my lifetime, but I owned up to them. And I just want to give an example of this. This was when I was still in Chennai. No, I was back in Delhi. We had made a big blunder in our final year's accounts. And the accounting was done badly. And both our financial team and our auditors did not catch on to what we had done. I immediately called a board meeting and said, I want to resign. This is I have to take the blame for it. It's ultimately the buck stops with me. And I'm taking the responsibility. So everyone, there were very wise people there on the board. They said, this sort of a thing happens in life. The fact that you have admitted it and you've realized your mistake and that you have, you're not blaming anybody else for it, is a great learning for you. And just take this as a learning, and it will make you a better manager and a better human being. So of course, I accepted their advice and didn't put in my papers. But it was something which I felt I was responsible for, and I was brought up that way. So I inculcated this sort of value system in the organization before we even got into practicing TQM. So hiding facts, hiding information was looked down upon by me and my entire management. So I don't think that we had that problem. But you are right that this is, as you said, some companies do this. Some companies are very clear that they will not do this. So facts are never to be hidden. And I'm proud to say that even today, when my sons are running the company, I get feedback from our directors who are from outside, other than my two sons who are members of the board. I'm not a member of the board. My two sons who are members of the board, one managing director, one chairman. The rest are outsiders. And I get feedback from the outsiders saying that we have not seen many companies with the kind of openness, with the kind of disclosures that you make, and the kind of clean reports you get from your auditors year after year. So I said, yes, that's part of our heritage, part of our DNA, and I am very clear that is something that has to be followed by everyone in the management.
I think that is recognized in the country. SRF is.
Yeah, and I don't do it for recognition.
Right. That is, I think those who do for recognition don't ever achieve that.
No, maybe not. But I just feel that it is part of ethics. And after all, we are relatively small owners of a company. All big public limited companies have got thousands, if not millions, of shareholders. So we are responsible to them, not just to ourselves.
Can you share your thoughts about Professor Kume's contribution, and what are the key aspects of Professor Kume which you think were outstanding?
Professor Kume, as many Japanese are, was a gentle soul. And he was a very persuasive person, because he knew that there is going to be resistance. And he knew that this resistance will come largely because nobody likes a drastic change in the way that they have been running a business. I'm not even sure how the original Japanese companies who followed Dr. Deming and Dr.
Ishikawa.
Ishikawa and Dr. Jennings?
Deming and Juran.
And
Right.
Juran. So Deming, Juran from America and Dr. Ishikawa. I wonder how those companies who had never practiced this, or maybe the Japanese had already practiced much of this without knowing it was TQM. But I always wonder to myself, how did they take this as a new way of working? Because let's forget Toyota, let's forget some of the big companies, but let's just take startups in Japan. They didn't have a background. There was somebody who started a company in a garage, and then it became a big company. I wonder how they did this. I think a lot of it had to do with the government of Japan, because they used to do these weekly programs on radio talking about quality, because Japan was known for bad quality. So they talked about quality, and Deming and Juran and Ishikawa, etc. Okay, but in India, Professor Kume knew that there would be immense resistance. And I think with any company that he worked, he must have found the same thing. Whether it was a continuous industry like ours or a discrete industry, it was easier for our people who were in a continuous industry to resist than in a discrete manufacturing industry. Because there were few examples of continuous industries having successfully implemented. By the way, there were 2 Birla companies in Thailand who had actually challenged the Deming Award much before us. And they were process industries, one making carbon black and the other making some chemical.
Other was textile.
Huh?
Carbon black, textile, and there was one more.
One more which was a process industry. So we had actually visited them. And I had taken about 30, 40 of our people to visit them. And I said, look, if they can, and they were very open, they were very happy to share everything with us. And I think that's one of the things about Deming, getting the Deming Award. You're supposed to share with everyone.
Absolutely.
Your experiences. And especially if you're not competing with somebody. Maybe an auto company will not share with another auto company. But what I'm trying to say is Professor Kume knew that there would be a lot of resistance. So he used to sit starting with Sushil Kapoor, who was the CEO, with all the people down the line. And he used to sit with them and explain to them, look, do it like this, do this, and you will see the results coming slowly. It will not happen overnight, but the results will start coming slowly. And so I think it was his persuasive nature, it was his communication skills, it was his gentleness. All these contributed to breaking down the resistance. And of course, he was a man of immense knowledge, and nobody could challenge his knowledge and his logic. That was something which nobody could challenge. So I think eventually, I don't think we could have got a better teacher, a better guru than Professor Kume.
Thank you. He was also proud of working with SRF and found it very, very useful for him, which was remarkable.
Because he told me once that I have not worked with a process company before, but that does not mean that we can't implement.
Similarly, your observation about Ram, who made a useful contribution, you've already mentioned a couple of times. It'll be good to learn how he played a key role in the...
I have not seen in my lifetime a more passionate person for a cause that anyone has picked up. It can be TQM, it can be anything else. I have not seen a person with more passion, more enthusiasm for something that he believes in strongly. And I think the country is beholden to have somebody like Ram who practiced what he preached, who wrote what he believed in, who taught what he thought was right, and who had the natural instincts for working out solutions for people the way that he thought they will be able to imbibe them. So, of course, he was an avid reader of quality practices, and not just TQM, any quality practice. He was a open-minded learner all the time. And I'm saying was, he still is open-minded learner. And anything that he can learn from, he will learn. And he is somebody, I think, who, SRF was the first company he really worked with, and that was his baby in a sense, to promote TQM in SRF. And I'm so happy and glad that because of his effort, his passion, his desire to see SRF grow, that today we are what we are in terms of our image, in terms of our success, in terms of where we have got to from where we were. A large part of it is because of Ram. And so I think whichever company he has touched, I think they would all feel the same way. Because again, like Professor Kume, he's a gentle soul who works with logic, convinces you, and has got the ability to make people change.
Professor Kume called him his best student, including his Japanese students.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done so much for the quality movement internationally and in India. It's not just being a teacher of TQM, but all that he has professed, he's utilized in the movements that are there on quality.
Sure. And he's made some useful, unique contribution of his own.
Yes.
Which is a great hallmark. Again, his humility, discipline,
Absolutely.
integrity, the
Absolutely.
same values which SRF has, he also imbibed.
No. I don't know whether he imbibed them from SRF, but he had the same qualities in a sense that I believed in.
Right.
So he was really, truly my partner.
So what did you do to keep SRF to stay the course and build on the Deming journey after winning the Deming journey?
So we left it to every business head. So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 businesses, distinct businesses. The tire cord, I would say the tire cord and related businesses like belting, fabrics, etc. And we have one CEO for that. We have a CEO for our chemical business. These are the commodity chemicals like refrigerant gases, chloromethanes, and then we have CEO for our specialty chemicals, and then we have a CEO for our plastic business, packaging business. Now, even in my time, I left it to each one of them to decide whether they wanted to actually challenge the Deming Award. But it was mandatory for everyone to follow the principles of TQM the way we had learned them in the tire cord business. So whether they are nomenclatured as TQM enabled or not, they follow all the processes of TQM. So every business has to have the same methodology which is there in our original tire cord business. And everyone follows it. And as I mentioned, that only 2 of our businesses actually challenged the Deming Award. The other 2 have not challenged it. And but they are following the process and the principles. Maybe someday they will, but I don't know. In any case, I'm not in the picture anymore. But whether they do or not, they're following the principle.
That's great. But what enabled this to happen? Because in many companies, after winning the Deming Prize, the companies wither away, they stopped following TQM and dilutes over a period of time.
You're right. This is a tendency that happens in every organization. What is called fatigue, what is called boredom, what is called we've had enough of this, too much effort, etc., etc. But fortunately, everyone who is today a CEO was brought up in the context of the TQM journey that we had. So even today, the CEOs who are the next generation from, let's say, Roop Salotra or Sushil Kapoor or Winston D'Souza or many of the others, they are all trained in the TQM methodology right from the beginning. And one of the great things that we have done is everyone who enters SRF has to mandatorily go through a TQM program. And that's one of the great things about Ravikant, is that he's now the guru internally who teaches everyone the essence of TQM and why TQM is important, why TQM works for us, why we have succeeded using TQM. So these aspects of TQM are taught right from the beginning to people who join the company. Why we have not slipped, and I don't know whether we have or not, I don't have a measure of that. But I know that every business is following our TQM principle. And it doesn't work if the top people are not involved in it. So obviously the top people, the CEOs, are definitely.
Great. I also sense, family-owned companies where the CEO has a long-term continuity tend to stay the course more often than somewhere places where the overall boss changes every 5 years or 7 years or something like that.
There are 2 types of family companies, as you know, and it's common knowledge. One is where the family runs the business themselves. I'm not making a judgment on whether that is right or wrong. Sometimes it's the best way to do it. And there is now more and more evidence that many family businesses are run by CEOs. And I think a lot of us have learned this from experiences in Europe and America, that you have professional CEOs from outside who are running the business. The businesses in a company. And it is true that we as a family business take a much longer term view of our vision, our business, and our lifespan of a CEO than what are called professional companies. Professional companies very often judge their CEOs on the basis of their financial results. We do not judge them entirely on financial results. We judge them on how many people they're building up, how many new success stories they've had, how they have created a vision for their business, which is important because they're going to be following it up and they're going to be implementing it. In a professional company, you don't know whether you're going to be there tomorrow or not. I would say that family businesses always have a longer term view. And if there is a consonance between a CEO and the family top management, uh, the longer that we keep a person, the better it is. But we also have another view and aspect that we don't want to have somebody who's there for a lifetime. Then you don't give the opportunity to others. So we do have instances where people may not retire at 58, they may retire at 60, 62, but generally we would not let people to go on beyond that, because then you're not giving an opportunity to the next generation. So we do, I think, by design, have long-term lifespans of CEOs in our business.
Great, thank you. Now, I recall the work done by SRF Foundation in the field of education and conservation of natural resources, which you touched upon earlier, but this is another aspect which is so well aligned with the TQM thought process. Would you like to share something on about that?
It all actually emanates from my grandfather's view on education, or sometimes lack of education in our country. And so, first and foremost, my wife, after a gap of 2 generations, started the Sri Ram schools. And they've become extremely successful, now being run by my daughter-in-laws. And that experience, and that this was in her lifetime also, that why can't we spread whatever knowledge we gain here in our schools to rural schools, to government schools, to schools where they don't have the benefit of the kind of teachers we have and the kind of learning that we are providing. So we decided to first do an experiment in a locality which was not too far away from our center of activity, which is in Gurgaon. So we chose area of Mewat, which is not far from here. It's an hour's drive from here. And very poor district. So we chose 19 villages and 40 schools. And I don't want to sound like a religious bigot or something, but it was almost 95% Muslim population. And very often, because of their practices, they were not sending particularly girls to school, and certainly not after puberty. And we were finding that there was a lot of dissonance because young people wanted an education. And the parents would not let them actually get the opportunity of having an education. So we went from house to house. Our team from the foundation went from house to house, from starting with the district collector down to the local government officials, to the headmasters of schools, and convinced them that we must bring the girls back to school. And for that, we had to provide toilets, because many of these government schools did not have toilets. And one of the main reasons why people were not sending their girl child was because there were no toilets there. How could the girls go in the open in front of boys? And so everywhere we built toilets, we provided water, and we provided amenities in the school. In some of the schools, we collaborated with IBM to put up computer systems. We put up solar panels so that they could get electricity for the computers non-stop. We put up smart boards in some of the classrooms. So all this we did in Mewat. After learning this, we said, why don't we spread this whole effort to the rest of the country? So in some places, we collaborated with other companies, like in the Northeast, where we don't have any plants or facilities, but we collaborated with those who did. And we started a number of the same kind of effort with a number of government schools there. And wherever we had our factories, it could be Indore, it could be Dahej in Gujarat, it could be Gwalior, it could be in various places in India. We started finding out villages where schools were there, but the education was of a very low quality. And we started working. Today, we have more than 500 schools who we are helping. And this is going up year after year, year after year. So a lot of this is with our own funds, our own efforts, but we also do get more and more people saying, can we collaborate together and start schools or help schools in certain parts of the country where we are not present?
Great. So let's jump to the next aspects. Young founders today want to scale fast and exit faster in the new generation of business leaders. If a 30-year-old founder came to you and asked, how do I build a company that lasts 100 years? What's the one thing you would tell them to master?
Interesting question. So first, let me say that if it is just to make money and you want to have a good life, then your model of building a new business and exiting is fine, that works for you. But if you have the desire to start a company and run it for the next generation, 100 years, then your attitude has to be, first and foremost, there are no shortcuts to success. There are no shortcuts to making money. It's a long grind. And in that long grind, you have to have some basic values that are very, very important to make a success out of it. And I can only preach what I know, which is good integrity, principles, ethics, good human relations, treat your colleagues as equals. So there are many things that you can do to create longevity in your organization. The moment you start thinking in terms of, oh, next year I have to have 25% more profits, and the next year I have to have another 25% more profit. Sure, there's nothing wrong by having ambition to grow fast, but not through shortcuts. And the moment you start thinking like that, you will start seeing success coming to you. And I would say there is no reason to think of why 100 years. It can be 200, 300, 400 years.
Okay, so if you had to explain TQM to a 24-year-old today who has never heard the term before, how would you describe it in one sentence that cuts through the jargon?
To explain in one sentence any new concept is not an easy thing to do. I would take a different approach. if I wanted somebody to understand TQM, learn TQM, I would point them towards a simple book on TQM and say that please read this. For my sake, read it. You don't have to agree with anything. You don't have to agree with anything that's written in the book. But please read it for my sake. After they've read it, they will come back to me and say, thank you, sir, for pointing me to this wonderful book, which has so many concepts I did not understand, did not even know. And I'm grateful to you that you introduced me to something which I was not even aware of. So awareness in one sentence is very difficult when it comes to TQM, because TQM is so many different parts of the ultimate journey that it's better explained by somebody who's written a simple book on it. I don't know whether Professor Ishikawa's book would be the best, but maybe that's more for people who are somewhat more familiar with TQM. But to get somebody interested and wanting to learn about TQM would be a simple. I don't know if there are any simple books on this.
I think Professor Ishikawa's book is the simplest. No jargon, nothing, plain, simple thinking.
Okay.
Easy to read, written in the first person kind of a thing.
Yeah, that I know.
Right. Final question. You've built factories, schools, music platforms, and values. When India remembers you, what do you want them to remember most about you?
I don't know what I would want them to remember me by, but I think I know what people will remember me by. As an all-rounder in cricket parlance. Because in my business avatar, I think I've seen a lot, I've done a lot. I've had many successes and I've had some failures. But that's human nature. But beyond that, I have also been very fortunate to have been exposed to classical music ever since the time I was born. I had the greatest musicians who used to come and stay in my grandfather's house, where we all stayed. I had the opportunity of listening to some of the greatest artists when I was conscious about music. I had the great opportunity of learning sitar from Pandit Ravi Shankar. And I learned sporadically from him from time to time because I was in college, I was in boarding school. So whenever I used to meet him and get the time, I used to learn from him. And I think because of my training in listening, I also learned much faster. And I think I will probably be, and afterwards, although I still play my sitar, I am not a concert artist. I don't perform in public very often. I do still a little bit, but not very often. And so I will be possibly remembered as a reasonably successful businessman and a reasonably successful musician. And my last 10, 15 years has been passionately involved in trying to promote classical music everywhere. And I have recently started a Gurukul where I want to teach young people the playing of sitar in Pandit Ravi Shankar ji's style. So that's my latest project. Hopefully it'll take off. And so I will be remembered, as I said, as an all-rounder. Reasonably successful musician and a reasonably successful business.
Thank you very much, Arun. I appreciate your time and it will be valuable. I learned many new things about you during this, which I never had the opportunity before.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my hidden talent.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I was encouraged by Panditji to play in public as often as I could. And I did, in my younger days, play concerts.
Okay.
So thank you, Janak. Thank you for giving me this opportunity of sharing my thoughts, largely on TQM, on our journey, on our value systems, on what I learned from my grandfather, and what benefited me and my companies, and what we have achieved through the learning of TQM and the implementing of TQM.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.